What's up guys, GrimXV here and welcome back to another Vrising video. In today's video we're going to be diving into blood archetypes and everything you need to know to get started with creating your builds. I'll also be sharing a very useful website at the end of today's video, so be sure to stick around for that. Now before we get started, just for anyone that doesn't know me, welcome first of all. My name is GrimXV. I'm a longtime Vrising player and I feature both PvE and PvP content on the channel, so feel free to snoop around and hopefully you find something you enjoy. Alright, now that said, for today's video, the way we're going to tackle this, we're going to be, first off, I've split each of the 9 blood types into 3 different categories. We're going to take a look at each of those, kind of explain what each of those do, and then after that we're going to get into the blood homogenizer to talk about some of the crazy combinations that are possible now. So starting off over here, we have all of the physical bloods. So for those that don't know, it's warrior, rogue, and brute. You can think of warrior, or I guess before I explain that, actually let me back up here. So for if you are completely new to the game, blood in Vrising is kind of the closest thing to a class system that we have. So, you know, on top of all of the crazy armor sets and all of that, this is the archetype that you can kind of build your character around. So that said, warrior is going to be kind of like the physical fighter out of the physical bloods. He's going to be someone who is centered around using combos and with weapons and all that. And we'll look at that blood in a second. And then rogue can be thought of as kind of the assassin, kind of the traditional sense of what the name represents. It's going to be a fighter based around crit chance, a lot of movement speed, and then also veil and armor penetration on their veil attacks. And then brute can be seen as the tanky option, but it's not your typical tanky option in the game. This one actually gives you some options for things like increased attack speed and almost kind of like a berserker sort of brute, if you will. So that said, we're going to move over here to the scholars now. So these are the caster type of bloods in the game. The simplest way I can explain this, Draculin, this is going to be the offensive type of spellcaster. This one's based around crit chance, movement speed, and spell CDR. Scholar is the defensive type of caster. This one's going to be based around things like shield efficiency, weapon CDR. Again, it actually has more CDR options than Draculin, and we'll get into that later. And then also things like ultimate power. And then mutant can be kind of seen as the minion sort of blood type in the game. So this is one that is based around minion damage, and then also things like ultimate efficiency and ultimate cooldown on the veil attack. So those are the two, before we get to these over here, those are the two kind of both spell and physical power bloods in the game. Now this category is, to make things simple, the way I like to think of these are as almost as like the PvE blood types. We'll get to corrupted last here, but starting off with creature, you can think of this one as sort of the mob type of blood. So this is what you would want to put on when you're going out farming mobs. Of course you don't have to, but that's just a way to simplify it. And what this blood does is it gives you things like a bonus HP, it gives you movement speed, especially movement speed on your travel skill as well, and then some healing based on how many mobs you kill, like you get some health back whenever you do the vampire execute and that kind of thing. And then worker is the PvE blood type that is centered around everything to do with farming resource nodes. So this is going to give you like increased resource yield, it'll give you RNG to just instantly break things like trees and rocks, and then you also have a lot of increased mount speed and things like that. So that is all of the, oh no, we have corrupted, right? I almost forgot. So this one we will go ahead and take a look at because this one is completely new. And I don't, you know, I call this a PvE blood, but it's really more of like a wild card type of blood. And as you can see here, the bonuses you get from it are pretty interesting, but we'll talk about this one last because there are some pretty neat things you can do with that tier 4 there. But yeah, you can just think of this as kind of the wild card for now, and then we'll get into that later. So to start off, I am going to go over and talk about the physical bloods first. So looking at warrior here, this blood, like I said earlier, is all about weapon combos, and the way the system for the blood homogenizer works is whenever you put a primary blood in and a secondary blood, and we'll just do this as an example, you will get the last tier 5 bonus, the last tier 4 bonus of each blood types. So that is guaranteed. And then the primary blood, whichever one you have there, you will get all of its tier 1, 2, and 3 bonuses as well. And then the secondary blood, you are going to be able to choose one of those, either tier 1, 2, or 3s to kind of complement what you have with your primary there. So that explained, looking at warrior, it's T1, it gives you physical power and then veil attack damage. We also have weapon cooldown rate and something called weapon skill power. Now, weapon skill power is a completely new stat to Vrising. This is just another way to scale your damage for physical builds, and this was introduced in 1.1. We didn't have this in 1.0. And then the last big one is weapon charge gain. This is also new. And the best way to explain this one is this is just going to be your option for getting resets. So previously we had a more RNG based system, and now this is a lot better in my opinion. What this does is, or what to translate this, whenever you cast a weapon skill, you're going to get 12 charges. So let's say if I cast a Spear Q, I'll get 12. If I throw out an Axe, I'll get another 12, and I'll be at 24. And you keep doing that until you reach 100. And then once you're at 100 or over that 100 threshold, the next ability you press is going to give you a reset. So if I'm at, say, 100 or 102, and then I press my Spear Q, after that Spear Q, or as soon as I press that Spear Q, it's going to reset the ability and allow me to press another weapon Q, which is insane, right? That just right away immediately kind of expands all the possible combos you can do. So this is a very fun build for anyone that enjoys combo or weapon swapping type of play. And then as we get into Rogue, this one is going to be your agile fighter. So this one's centered around everything to do with crit chance and movement speed, and then also armor pin on its veil attacks. And it also gives you some veil attack CDR there. And you know, this is going to be the agile fighter. So this is going to be someone that likes to kind of hit and run. You're going to go in, do some quick autos, back out, wait for cooldowns, that kind of thing. And this is personally something that I think I really enjoy. I will say some of the opinions I give here are going to be biased, so I'll do my best to kind of avoid that. But when it comes to open world fighting, Warrior tends to excel just because you can kind of pick and choose those engagements based on whether you want to go in and fight or back out and be kind of passive while you whittle them down. And then for Brute Blood, we have kind of the tanky option. Now, like I said, there are some additional things you can do. As you see, the first line there gives you increased attack speed and then also some physical power, and then you have damage reduction and then more health for the last two. And then the big one for this one is its tier 4, which is just gives you parry chance and then also a chance to increase your physical power when you parry. So automatically just putting this on as a secondary is going to make anyone any build you do just incredibly tanky. So if you are playing Rogue and you like that play style and you want to be tanky, you know, this would be the option that you put on for that. But that said, I do want to go ahead and get into the mixes that you can do with this. So starting off with Warrior as primary, if we go ahead and slot our Rogue there, and just keeping in mind that this is someone who is going to be doing weapon-based combo type of play, the options you have here is you could go for crit chance, which as you're going to see with a lot of these, the first option you choose isn't really going to make a whole lot of sense unless you're trying to do something specialized with armor and weapons. That will be a separate video. I'm going to try to keep things streamlined here. And then you also have an option for more movement speed. So this is just going to give you some extra speed to kind of maneuver around. And then you have Veil cooldown rate. Now for this combination, I think this one is really interesting because when you look at the stat line for Warrior, that first one there that gives you increased Veil attack bonus or increased damage on your Veil attacks, that's going to be kind of an interesting way of fighting, right? So you're going to be someone that kind of like waits or like slowly walks in and gets aggressive, and then you dash in, get your Veil proc to do damage, and then combo from there. I will say that I think that Warrior is very strong. I don't know if this combination with Rogue is strongest or if the other way is, but we'll get to that when we get to looking at the Rogues. But something that Warrior really struggles with is movement speed, and you can make that up a little bit with spells like Power Surge. But out of these two options, personally, if you want my opinion, I would probably lean towards the Veil CDR rate for this one. So that is going to be the Warrior and Rogue. Like I say, this is someone that wants to do combo based fighting still, but with just a little bit more mobility, or it's specialized around Veil attacks. And then Warrior and Brute, this is going to be the tanky combo fighter. So this one's interesting. because you do actually get a lot of value out of the tier 1 passive for Brute. Like I said earlier, just having that parry chance is going to immediately make you more tanky, so you can kind of think of this as almost like a Juggernaut build, just someone that kind of slowly walks in and pressures, just takes parry chances and still gets in and gets the combo done. The interesting thing with this one, I do like having the additional attack speed, because this helps you with spacing. So as you're trying to close in, if you can weave in pistol autos, that's going to help you kind of stay even in the trade. And then primary life and DR, that's also good. And then max health is also good. This is going to give you 1 note for max health, just because, and hopefully I don't lose you guys here, but veil attacks when you're fighting are one of the main ways to keep yourself healthy in a fight. So if I'm in an engage and I want to heal up, I'm going to try to get my veil attack, whether it be on a mob or on a player. And that's because this gives you 5% of your max HP back. Well, when you have more HP, you obviously heal more with that. So going for HP as a secondary option for Brute can also be very interesting, especially when you get it from other sources like your weapon, because then you can heal as much as 150 to 200 with your veil attack, which is just going to make you an absolute nightmare from a sustain standpoint. So that one's kind of interesting. And then now we're going to look at Rogue. So personally, and this is purely based on my testing, this is a squishy fighter that's based around crit chance and high attacks, but I've personally had the best success with kind of doing a full-on damage variant with this setup. And the way you do that is usually actually by going for the veil attack bonus damage. And the reason why that pairing is so good is just like the other option. You have the veil CDR rate that you get back from Rogue, and then the 100% crit chance. But unlike the Warrior, you also have a lot of crit damage and movement speed, which is going to be even better for landing those veil attacks. So if you're someone that wants to fight with veil as a priority, I would actually go for this arrangement rather than the Warrior Rogue, because it's going to feel a lot better to kind of go in and out based on your veil there. But other options you could do weapon CDR. I don't really think this is that optimal weapon leech overall in the game. Just kind of doesn't really hit the mark based on what I've tested and experienced so far. And then weapon power is interesting to play around with, because you can get a decent amount of weapon power just through passives and things. But again, the best option I think is the veil CDR to complement the Rogue and kind of what it's all about with that hit and run play style. Now moving on to Brute Blood. This is going to be another really strong combination, especially because of all the reasons we listed earlier, like with Rogue and Open World. This is just going to give you that sustain that the Rogue build doesn't have, which is very impactful. Now, the one I personally run with this one is also the tier 1 because of the increased attack speed. So if I can grab like a weapon really quick. Oh gosh, I don't have a ranged weapon. I need a pistol, but I'll show that once that's... I'll do some demonstrations here at the very end just for what they look like. But while that's cooking, just to kind of explain, what you do ideally with this is you usually play with pistols. Pistols are very strong in this patch. So you can think of it as in like you're dipping in and out of range, doing the pistol autos, and then you go in for a combo or capitalize on their mistake with the combo, and then kind of rinse and repeat. And this just gives you an option to be a little bit more aggressive than the Rogue Warrior setup, because you do have that parry chance, which is very, very strong. And the crazy part is that it also increases your physical damage, so it's kind of insane. So that's that one. And then I am going to cover the Brute side. So for the Brute side, this is your tanky options for anyone that just wants to build tank. For these setups, the one that I would probably go for, it's hard to say. I'll be honest, I don't really like this setup that much. I don't really like using Warrior as secondary. The weapon charges are nice, but unless you're fully leaning into that weapon skill power, you're not really getting the most out of what the build's intended to do. So this is probably not a super great option in my opinion, but if I had to choose one bonus that I would go for here, it would probably be the CDR maybe. And the only reason I say that is because that's going to help you with some of the healing that you get. But honestly, it's kind of up in the air. Depends on what else you got going in the build you run. Veil attacks could be decent as well, just because you are going to be doing veil attacks to keep yourself topped up when you're using brute. So that one's a little bit of a difficult choice. I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments what you think about that. And there's a lot of other experienced players there, but that's that combo. And then for the rogue setup, honestly, with this one, I would just go for movement speed. If you don't have it on your weapon or any other source, as using brute blood as primary, you're going to be pretty hard pressed to get any sort of crit chance that matters. You can of course get it on your weapons and get decent, so that, you know, if that's something you want, sure, go for it. But movement speed in this game is king when it comes to doing any sort of physical melee build, so that one's going to be kind of difficult. And then as a final tip here, just for those that are trying to play like a ranged build, rogue would of course be the build you want to have as a primary there, because that movement speed to kind of get in and out and poke, as we mentioned, is going to be best. So that said, yeah, the options for me would be probably either the tier 2 or maybe the tier 1 if you're doing something specialized for that setup. So that is that. Hopefully that's a decent explanation for you guys. If you do have any comments about anything I go over here, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll definitely get to them. But starting over to the combinations you can do with these. So Draculin, this is going to be crit based, and it's got some interesting things here. As you see, its tier 4 is based around spell crit strikes and giving you more CDR, and then really this blood is kind of like rogue. This is really all you need for a good source of spell crit from what I've tested. And then the other one that I find really interesting is the tier 2. So not only does that give you spell crit chance, but it also makes your spell hits give you 8% movement speed, which is kind of insane. So this is going to be for someone that enjoys like mobile play. Like a good spell to kind of pair with this is sorry about that, guys. I had to do a time skip there because my alarm went off. But as I was saying, I think a good spell pairing for this one is Chaos Volley, just because Chaos Volley strips out 2, and then you're also kind of pretty mobile while you're casting them. So yeah, this is just the Agile Mage. And then we're going to look at, oh right, I got to give you my recommendation here. So if I was going to use this as secondary, I would do that tier 2 that we mentioned. The tier 3 doesn't really give you anything. It's kind of like the throwaway for this one. Tier 1 as well isn't really that optimal. With this one, in my mind, if you're doing secondary, I would always go for the tier 2. Now looking at the Scholar, this being the kind of defensive mage, and this one is very heavily centered around spell CDR. And as you can see, we also have for its tier 4 the spell recharge game. So just like the weapons, if I'm casting spells and as I do that, cast one spell, I'll get 12. If I were to do another one, I'll go to 24 all the way up until 100 before you get that reset. One interesting thing with this one though is that you can actually pair this with the Phantasm now. So Phantasm has been reworked a little bit. The way this works now is as you get stacks of Phantasm, you will get more spell recharges for each charge. So because of the mastery system, you can now have up to 12 stacks of Phantasm. So what that means is that with Phantasm build and the Scholar build, you're going to be getting 24 charges per spell cast, which is absolutely insane, right? That means 2 spells, you're going to be 48 charges, which is like half the way there. 4 spells, you'll get a reset. So this one, anyone that wants to do kind of like a spell slinger, you can pair those two and they're going to be insane. But the one that I would say gets the most value here, there's really 2. Honestly, it's tier 2 and 3 are very good in my opinion. The tier 1 is really not that great. I wouldn't choose that for any sort of secondary build I would go for. And then for the Mutant blood, this being the summoning or ultimate based blood, for this one, the tier 1 again would be kind of the throwaway in my opinion. The tier 2 there gives you increased cooldown rate and then a chance to spawn 2 mutants when you cast your ult. Now the mutant rats that it spawns are literally just like a bigger version of the mutant rats that are out in Gloomrot, and they're not really great, guys. The biggest problem that summons have when fighting in this game is that they offer a source for whoever you're fighting to heal. So if I'm fighting a summoner and they summon a skeleton, or if I see a mutant rat, all I'm going to do is like dash in and auto that thing and then back up and try to pepper you with ranged abilities, right? Just use them to keep myself topped up. But the really interesting one is its tier 3. The increased ultimate power and the minion damage, I actually like those quite a bit. And then of course it's tier 4 that you get guaranteed is very, very nice as a secondary. I will say that out of all of the caster blood types, this one is the one that kind of doesn't make sense to have as a primary to me. It's almost like out of any you would want to do, you would want to have this as a secondary, just kind of like what we discussed with Brute. Like, you can do it, but it's not going to be as good as some other arrangements. So that said, let's talk about what I would do here if I were Draculin Scholar. So with this one, you can kind of think of this as just like a more, I guess just getting more CDR, or you can go ultimate focus. There's 2 different ways you can do it. So you'll have the offensive damage already from Draculin, and then you can look to go, fully just capitalize on that Draculin tier 4 spell with the spell CDR by also going into spell CDR here with the tier 2, and then you also have the resets, so that can be very strong. And then the other way is with the tier 3. Now, I didn't expand on this earlier, but this tier 3 here is really, really strong, guys. And what makes this so strong is that whenever you cast your ultimate, you're going to reset your spells, and that has insane complications, right? Like, when I get to the hybrid builds, your mind's going to be kind of blown, but that's a whole separate thing. So so let's say I'm fighting someone, right? And if I'm running an offensive like ice block, let's say if I have this on, I'm running an offensive, maybe I've got like mistrance, maybe I'm doing something quirky like mistrance this, and I'm just playing the range game with Draculin, and then I'm using mistrance to kind of bounce around and get out. Well, as soon as I get caught, all I have to do is press this, and then like my mistrance is back, right? I can just use that to eat something and space again. So that one is very, very strong in my opinion, and there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. So that would be my choice between these 2, based on whether you want it to be just cooldowns overall, or kind of have like that reset for when you want it. Now, another way, before I move on, another way to use this that's strong is for combo builds. So let's say you're doing a mage-based combo build. Maybe you have something like Spider. Maybe you're doing like Spider Crystal Lance or Ice Bat or something. One way to think about this is, let's say you Crystal Lance someone, you cast your Spider, you Spear Q or do a Frost Infused Q, and then you can freeze them again and then freeze them again, right? And that's just one option. But you can get some truly one-shot materials. I'm not someone who typically plays a lot of Scholar, but I've seen people do just insane things with that reset. So that is a very strong way to use that as well. Now, looking at, before we go on, if I was to do this with Mutant, this actually is something I've played around with quite a bit. More so just because of its tier 4 with the ultimate reset. I find that to be really nice to have as a secondary. And then honestly, the one that I go for this most of all is actually the tier 1. And I know that's kind of contradictory to what I said earlier about kind of the tier 1 being the throwaway, but the reason for that, why I think that's strong with this one, is because it's just going to improve what you already do. The biggest gain for this spell or this blood type as a secondary is getting your ultimates back and kind of having that as you either fight open world or just in a prolonged engagement, and then just having that extra spell power is just going to make your spell damage hit even harder. So that's the one I would choose for this combination. And then if we go ahead and look at Scholar, so for Scholar, Draculin, with this being the defensive in mind, I would most likely just go for, where is it here? I would go for probably just more movement speed as a priority pick here, because you're already going to be getting the spell crit, spell crit down here. So every time you crit a spell, you're going to get more CDR, and then going for the spell crit and movement speed here is just going to increase the chances that you have at proccing that extra CDR, right? And that's going to be that's going to be additive to what you already have in your spellcaster kit. So this could be really just like a true spell slinger. I know this is technically the defensive blood, but these 2 combo together, just absolutely absurd. You could just like sling spells left and right with this setup. The tier 3, I do think, like I said earlier, is throwaway. You don't really get that much from Leech in this game. It's not really that optimal. Your veil attack is the main way to sustain yourself. Leech is honestly something you can just kind of ignore. And then the tier 1 doesn't really make sense for this because, again, you don't have crit chance, so the crit power doesn't really do anything there. You get more value from doing that one. Now with Mutant Blood, you do have some interesting things you can do with this. Because you already have your ultimate power on your 3, you could go for even more ultimate power here. Now the minion damage, you know, it's kind of not really worth noting. I don't know. Okay, yeah, so your Arachnid is counted as a minion. So if you're playing Spider, this could be really good for just maximizing the amount of damage this does. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. So this could be good for like a niche build with Spider, because this is going to make this thing hit even harder. But the reason why I was saying it was throwaway a moment ago is because the other minion skill that you have is Army of the Dead, and you don't really get a lot of value out of this, to be honest. This is good for like PvE and bossing, but PvP you just don't really see this shine at all. So that's an interesting combination. The other combination I would consider is the cooldown rate for this one. And that's just because it's going to be additive to the cooldown ultimate CDR that you already have and just in your kit in general. But if I had to pick one for sure, it would probably be like a ultimate based damage build for this setup. It's very, very, very strong. And then, like I said earlier, this one doesn't really make a lot of sense to do, but if you are going to do it, for the Draculin subtype, I would probably choose... I'd probably still go crit chance and movement speed here. That's really like the best option for this blood as a sub blood. It's just going to make you more mobile and you know, help you kind of pick and choose your engagements better. And then for the Scholar, the best thing we could choose again is going to be that ultimate reset rate there, because the whole point for me in my mind with the Mutant Blood is to capitalize your Arachnid damage, just because of all the baked in like minion damage you already have. So that would be strong for that. So that is that. There are some more interesting things you can do with that blood, but we'll save that for the hybrid section. Now with these bloods here, there's not really a whole lot of rhyme or reason why you wouldn't mix Worker with anything. This is just something you're going to throw on when you want to do a quick loot run. So the mount speed is very nice, and this is the only blood in the game that gives you the mount speed, but there's not really anything you can get from any others. I guess if you wanted to do just like a crazy like PvE run kind of thing where you're just farming and getting nodes, then you could maybe mix it with Creature. But let me just back up there. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Let me look at what each of these do. So Creature gives you increased HP, and then it also gives you movement speed for the tier 2, and then increased healing for the tier 3. Now the all resistance there, that doesn't really have anything to do with PvP. That's a common misconception. What that's referring to is things like silver resistance and sun damage. So that's what that's going to be like for any time you want to do like a silver node run. You could put this on, and that would help a lot with that. And then the last one there is the bite. Like I said earlier, it's going to heal you back kind of the same amount as a dash, actually. I didn't realize that, but that's kind of impactful. And it temporarily increases your attack speed and physical damage output. So this is going to be really good for any type of PvE or environment-based fighting that you do. And then we did already just have the Worker on the screen there, but resource yield, mount speed, the only thing that gives you that. And then, yeah, we already looked at that, but it's self-explanatory. It's just what you're going to do to farm nodes. And then we talked about Creature a little bit earlier as well. So because these don't really mix that well together, I'm going to move on to talking about the hybrid section. All right, guys, so you're going to see a bit of a cut there just because it turned into a huge ramble and I don't want to make you sit there and just listen to me kind of go on. You've already listened to me ramble quite a bit. So I don't recall exactly what I said before I went into this statement or into this hybrid section, but there are a lot of possibilities. So instead of trying to tell you all of them, I'm going to leave that exploration for you and just tell you what I think works best for each of these. So I'll tell you what I think works best for Rogue, for Warrior, for Rogue, and Brute when using Physical as a primary and Scholar as a secondary. And then I'll do the same thing with Scholar as primary and these as secondaries as well. So Starting off with Warrior, because this one is centered around weapon charges, the best pairing in my mind is going to be Scholar, because you also get those spell charges. So in a way, it kind of just enables even more of your combo play, right? Not only do you and it's going to be strong for Frost or any type of lockdown, like Illusion specifically, because not only are you getting those weapon resets, but you're also going to be getting things like spell resets or defensive resets. This is another one that's probably going to be really strong for double defensive builds. And the pairing that I would do here, just to complement, so you have two options in my mind. You could either go for the spell CDR and shield, and the spell CDR is good for double defensives. The shield is going to be good for any type of frost play, because these three abilities that I have on, as you can see, they all give you a shield on top of your HP based on your spell power. And the reason why shield is strong in the game is because whenever you take damage, if you've noticed, you have kind of like a black HP bar up under your red one. And the way that works is, as you take damage, you're going to lose red HP, and then you'll also start to lose the black HP bar. And as that black HP bar goes down, that's going to be the limit for where you can regen your health back to. So that's why trading is also very important in the game. And I could do a whole video separate on that. But the reason why shielding is strong is because it kind of supersedes that. So whether your black HP bar is low or not, it's going to be a shield on top of that they still have to eat through just to get some good damage down on you. And so that's one option. The other option is the ultimate reset, and just like we talked about earlier, this is just going to be even stronger for combo based play. I mean, you could lock someone down in a crazy combo, cast an ultimate like ice block or something else, and then combo off of it from there once you have your spells up, and just keep the combo chain going. So that would be the two options I'd choose for a hybrid warrior. Now for a hybrid rogue, I really like Draculin, and you're going to kind of see some one-to-one matchups here. The reason why I like Draculin is because rogue is all about movement speed and that kind of thing, and what Draculin excels at is movement speed and as well, and crit. So like we said, my favorite tier 2 for secondary Draculin, or my favorite for Draculin is the tier 2 when secondary, and just because of the synergy, the spell crit that it has on the tier 4, and then the additional movement speed is going to be very strong. And I can't remember if I've said it in this video, I know I've said it in others, but whenever you're doing your stat bonuses and you're trying to get your stat caps, blood is the exception. So anything you get from blood and anything you get from your spells can go beyond that cap. So when I'm fighting, if I'm already capped out on movement speed, and then let's say I do a spell hit, I'm going to get 8% movement speed on top of that for 3 seconds. That's how that works. So yeah, very, very strong, very, very agile fighter. Really, really fun to play with. For Brute, I would say pair it with Scholar. And the whole idea here is just to be tanky. And this could work either way. Arguably, Scholar primary and Brute secondary could be stronger, but for an overall full tank, if you're just someone that just wants to play tank in general, these two together are insanely strong, because not only do you get the shield efficiency from Scholar, but you also get things like the damage DR or HP from Brute. So it's just going to be a monster. This is the true Bulwark or Juggernaut build. And if you're doing Brute primary with Scholar secondary, I would honestly, I don't really like this pairing, just to be completely honest. I don't think Brute with hybrid considerations for Brute, I think you don't want Brute primary, you pretty much just want Brute secondary. And what I would select would be the DR for this one in particular, because this is a strong, like I say, this is a strong build, guys. This is very good. This is for sure a contender for meta right now, if that tells you anything, just because of the stuff you can do. But I'll touch on that stuff way later. To stay on topic here, we'll call that there. With Brute, I would do secondary and pair it with Scholar. Now for an offensive with Scholar, that's hybrid. Again, Warrior, just kind of like we talked about earlier, just paying off both of their tier 4s. What I would choose here would probably be the weapon power. Again, just so that I could get a little bit more damage. You can think of this as kind of the battle mage sort of build. This is going to be someone that likes fighting with spells, but also likes to get in and do damage with their weapons. So this would be strong for that. And then for the Draculin, I'm not saying this is what I want, but I'm just taking a look here just to see. It's probably going to be Rogue again, to be honest. For me personally, there's a lot other things you can do. Like Brute's always an option whenever you're considering Bloods, but personally, I think I would enjoy this more with Rogue, and I would probably run. I might run the Veil CDR. Yeah, I think I would run this. And the reason why I say this is because of the Rogue Tier 4 giving you a chance to expose a victim's armor. Because this is something a lot of people don't realize is they think this is just physical damage. No, this is all sources, guys. So this is also spell damage. So if you're someone playing hybrid Draculin, that means you go in, get a Veil attack, and then you just unload, right? You just unleash on them. So sorry about that. That was my alarm. So using my build as an example that I'm going to be showcasing this wipe, the way I would use this blood would be I would go in right with my Veil attack, get the freeze, and keep in mind I have these guys, but keep in mind that first auto is going to give them that 15% more damage, and then if I can freeze off that, that's even better. Another way to do that is if you were to do this, right, you push them, go in, get the auto, and then not only are they going to be frozen, they're also going to have that damage reduction from Rogue, you know, that exposed victims, which makes them take 15%, and then you can just do that. And that's going to give you another 15% damage reduction on the pop from bone explosion, so that'll be 30%. And then you can also, you know, that's just going to make your spear Q, your static spear Qs, just absolutely shred. So that is a strong combo. This is something I did test and play in the beta, and I was doing a ton of damage, guys. I'm talking like 1/3 of someone's HP in one combo, if not more. So by far my favorite setup with this. One other honorable mention, I guess, would be the primary there. And I know I said earlier, and probably keep repeating myself, that sometimes these are throwaways and it's not good to double dip, but there are some exceptions. You know, it can be done. It's just that it's not advised, right? It's not the norm. But that's my thoughts around that. Mutant for hybrid, again, kind of like the others, just not really ideal as a primary. I do think Mutant secondary with Rogue is very interesting to play around with for hybrid builds, and that's playing off of the Rogue having lower CDR timer on its Veil, and then also the interaction here where anytime you Veil attack, you get your ultimate timer reduced. I think that is very strong and interesting. And the one I would probably choose for this, I mean, it's kind of a crapshoot to be honest with you, but I guess I would go with ultimate power. I mean, really, you can do whatever you want. I guess you could go with the tier 1 as well if you're like just wanting a little bit more damage on your spells. But the big prize there is just the synergy between the dash CDR and the ultimate resets for this. And then lastly, for hybrid on the creature, I do see this as more as a physical. I probably could have included it with the physical builds, but for this one, the only one I really would consider would probably be the Scholar as well, and that's just to get you some spell charges, and then also the reset on ultimate. That'll help you clear mobs really quick with that. Another honorable mention here for this one really quick is going to be Brute with creature, and the idea there is to stack HP. So this is going to give you the most HP you can get. You can stack HP here, and then also the tier 3 here for more HP. I think that's going to do it, guys. Corrupted Blood secondary, the hybrid are the two options I would do for that in general. Like I said earlier, or I'm not sure if I've cut it out, but I would consider either doing the warrior with the weapon charges, I would consider doing the spellcaster with the spell charges, or I would do Brute. And the reason why Brute with this is decent is because of the parry proc. The parry is going to give you a chance to survive some of those incoming mage guys that are going to do a crap ton of damage to you. I'm actually going to show you this one just so you can kind of get a sense of what happens when you start fighting. And is it spells or is it just, let's see, I don't remember if it spells when you're using an ability. Yeah, so it spells or weapon abilities. So there, you can see that guy, and then it hits you, right? Now, because I'm level 15, that doesn't do a lot of damage. These scale based on your level. But as you're fighting, these guys will just pop up. And, you know, they'll hit you. They can pop out of sight like that there. And because you have all of the weapon resets, it is just insane. Like, you see that? There's so many popping up already, and they are doing damage. Now, the other thing, I don't know if you caught it there. Let's see if I... Right there. So that is the other thing that's really bad with this one, which is that eruption snare. Anytime you take damage, you have a chance to trigger that eruption. That is going to snare you, and then it does a ton of damage. So even this one, even though this looks super juicy on paper, in practice, it's going to be hard, dude. I mean, you could be like the god gamer that just dodges all the things and does the stuff, right? But this one is going to be very, very difficult in my mind. But that is an option. If I was to choose a pairing with this, or with corrupted blood, with any of the blood types at all, you would only want to do that secondary blood type. All right, guys. So I have jumped over to a website called Vrising Meta. Now, this website is new. This is actually created by Chappl, who is another Vrising content creator. He's also a part of the V Arena staff like I am. And he's a really solid guy. He plays a lot of awesome builds. If you haven't seen his content, I'll include a link to it in the description below, as well as a link to this website. But he's put this together to be a resource to help everyone. Now, to go over this site, it has all the spells, and then a link to the wiki for the spells, so you can see the description, and you can sort this by type, so you can see all of the blood spells, you can see all of the frost spells, the chaos, unholy, illusion, and so on, and then go to a description about those to kind of help you with your theory crafting. But the real big thing I want to showcase here is the spell builds. Now, like I said, I am going to do a video maybe later today or tomorrow talking about all of the stats and things and different ways you can kind of build and flesh out your builds. But here are some suggested builds from the community. So a lot of these are done by Chappl, myself, some other big streamers and Vrising content creators like Chipsa. There's also Count Dicula and Bardo, which are very good players. If you've been a part of the PvP community, I'm sure you know those names. Fallen also has some builds in here. But this is going to be a resource that you can use to kind of look at and get some ideas for builds. And then we also have a grading system. So I went ahead and submitted the build that I've done from my PvP series, my PvP blueprint series. As you can see here, I have it listed as a tier A build. And you know, the reason for that is because it is kind of a build that is slower pacing, and it is a heavy combo based build. But in here you'll see the name of the build, you'll see a description, what content is best in. This is a high damage hybrid build, as I said, and then you'll see the spells, the blood variation, and then the number 1 here represents what I would pair it with. So the number 1 there, that is the crit. That is what I usually pair this with, just because I play heavily with weapons as well. Another solid option, like we talked about earlier, is the tier 3 for that veil penetration. And then this is the armor I play it with, Draculin armor, the amulet, the elixir, and then the coating. The coating I think pairs best with it. One note on the coatings. Obviously, this doesn't have to be every single weapon, but this is just for, of course, setting up your weapon freezes. And then these are also the passives that I set with it. So very, very good resource here. There are some top tier builds as well. I know I had a chance to play one that Chipsa made that I thought was really good and different. Where is that one at? I saw that one somewhere on here. Oh, gosh. Oh, right there. Yeah, so this is one that Chipsa made that I played around with in the beta, and it was also very good. And then another one for the people that like double defensive. I put my old double defensive build from Gloomrot. I retouched that one up, and then also kind of did the build for the 1.1 version. Now, you will get a lot of shit. To be frank, you'll get a lot of shit for playing double defensive because a lot of people in the community look down on it. But, I mean, if you're someone that enjoys it, just play it, dude. It doesn't really matter. It's my opinion on it anyway. But that is going to be it for the video, guys. I hope you find this tool useful. Be sure, again, to go check out Chappl's content. And, yeah, if you have any questions, leave them in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is GrimXV, signing off.